joining us today for the presentation on the Menominee River, Menekaunee, and their significance to the Menominee Nation. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Evelyn Naziri. I work here at the university in the International Student Programs Office, and I'm also a member of the Inclusion and Diversity Committee that the campus has. It is a pleasure to introduce and welcome Guy Reiter. I've had the privilege of communicating with him for the past month, setting his visit up, and we are so pleased to have him on our campus as part of November being Native American Heritage Month, as designated by the Library of Congress. Mr. Reiter is a member of the Menominee Nation, and he serves on many of their task forces. This includes their Constitution Task Force, their Air and Quality Task Force, the Menominee Conservation Committee. He is also a writer, a community organizer, a philosopher, an activist, and he self-describes as an amateur archaeologist. So without further ado, Mr. Reiter, thank you so much.
And speak about the significance to the river, to us, the Menominee Nation people. It's a big part of who we are, and in that presentation I try to get that point across to you. And I was told too that make sure you guys take good notes, the quiz at the end. I think I kind of geared my...
Yep. Can we have the microphone on? You don't need it. We want everybody to hear because there will be a quiz.
My name is Guy Reiter. At first, I wanted to thank Evelyn and Inclusive and Diversity Committee, Student Government, and for giving me the opportunity to come up here and to be able to talk a little bit about our Menominee River and what it means to us as a people. It's a pretty big part of who we are. We're Menominee people, Menominee River. It makes a lot of sense. And also, I did say too that we were going to have a quiz at the end. Hopefully, you guys pay close attention to everything I say. Write everything down, word for word. But first and foremost, I always, before I get going, I kind of wanted to speak a little bit of our Menominee language, introduce who I am, and tell you a little bit about myself. So at this time, I'm going to take a little bit of tobacco out. We always like to take tobacco out before we speak our language. I'm always very humbled to be able to speak our language. We're down to, I think, 7 fluent speakers on our reservation. They're all in their 80s. There's a lot of us younger people that are trying really hard to learn our language, to keep it going, to teach our young children. So I'm just going to say a little bit and then I want to get going. So I'll explain a little bit after I get done. Our language, my Menominee name, my true name is Onequit. It means, I guess what you would say is cloudy skies, but I always kind of thought it meant is extremely handsome. That's what I was told. But, so my first slide, I also talked about where I came from, what I was going to do today, and that if I were to say something wrong, that was our ancestors, what we call ourselves, is Kayas Mamache Tawak in our language. If you were to translate that into English, I guess the best translation I could give you is like the first peoples. That's what we call ourselves. Menominee people was something that other tribes called us, and actually in our language it's Menominee, and it means like people of the wild race. So I'm going to try to be brief with this. Our people have been on this land for 10,000 plus years, and I'm going to try to condense it down into an hour, which is almost impossible. So I'm just going to take out some major points that I feel that help mold us and are very important in our history. Now this map shows our original homeland. About 6 years ago, or even maybe 7 years ago, we did some research on our reservation to try to cite some of the sites that our Menominee people were cited on through books or accounts by Jesuits or whatever, and we come up with a map that all these places is where our people were there. There's accounts of them in books. As you can see, that our history, our original territory is vast. We were all over that, all over this place. These are actual accounts. I have a list of probably about 3 pages long that show all these typical these spots that we were. We have the resources and the books to show that. The little red one in the middle, right on the Wolf River. This is where we are now. So we went from there to what we are now. And there it is, Menekaunee. Now this, I wanted to bring this picture up because I wanted to show you guys a little bit about what our reservation looks like from the satellite. It was in the late 70s, early 80s. They were doing a survey of our county. They were doing DNR was doing a survey of the county, and they flew over it in a plane. And when they seen that, the pilot had said it looks like a forest island because it was surrounded by surrounded by cornfields. Our actual restaurant at our casino, we named it the Forest Island Restaurant because of this picture. I was also told too that NASA uses our reservation to fix their satellites because it's so perfectly cut out. So straight. And I'll talk to you a little bit, how we're able to maintain our forest. Like I said, I don't have a lot of time to talk about that stuff, but I'll touch on it. As some of you might be aware, in 2014, this year, we got granted federal approval to have an off-reservation casino in Kenosha. That's yet to happen. The state hasn't approved it yet, but we're hoping. It's going to definitely help us, people at home, help our poverty, and hopefully help some of our program, help us get out of that. The other part of our my slideshow is the Menominee Casino, and that Menominees were the first tribe in Wisconsin to have a casino. In '82, we signed that. We built our first bingo hall. It didn't have any of the blackjack tables or like Las Vegas style games, but it was mostly just a bingo hall. Also, in the same earlier years, I think what was it, 77, we opened our clinic. Prior to this, we had a hospital, but it wasn't run by Menominees. It was run by the government. We were one of the first tribes to have a Indian-owned, Indian-operated tribal clinic. And that's actually the present picture. That big part on the end of the picture there is we just built that. It just got put up like a couple weeks ago, the opening for it. It's a new dental and new all kinds of administrative and great things. We have our own school district now. That happened in '76, right around the same time as our clinic. We separated from what was at that time Shawano School District. We got our own school district to be able to teach our own language, our own culture, to add some of those things that we feel are crucial in our history. Also, in '75, we also got our tribal police, first ran by Native Americans. Up until this time, it was kind of the government that kind of did. But there was, Native Americans that were called sheriffs or constables or whatever they called them at that time. But it was basically ran by the government. In '75, we took over. We got our own tribal police. We got our own jails. We got our own court system. The other picture happened right around the same time, and that is, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's the Menominee Warrior Society when they took over the novitiate in Gresham. And it was right around '75. It was around that time when, AIM was big, and I don't know if you guys know what AIM is, but I'm sure some of the older folks do. And I don't know about some of the younger people. It's the American Indian movement, and in the '70s they were real proactive on bringing up Native American issues, and it was really a movement, to help people to understand and be proud of who they are. So that kind of resonated on our reservation also. Kind of got some of our folks in that kind of fed up stage, getting sick and tired of being sick and tired. So one of the things that our warriors decided to do was take over that novitiate, and then it was just to bring awareness to our tribe, to show everybody how poor we were and the conditions that we were living on. Now, this is a big chunk of our history. This talks about termination and restoration. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Menominee Nation, but in '52 we were terminated as a tribe. The federal government terminated us. We no longer existed in the eyes of the government as Menominee Indians. We had petitioned Congress in 1952 for $1,500 because we won a settlement a little bit earlier than that, 2 years earlier than that. And on that when we petitioned the government, there was that gentleman there, Arthur Vivian Watkins. He put a provision under that bill that said if we were to accept this money, we would also accept termination. He come to our reservation in '53 and tried to explain to us exactly what it meant, termination. It kind of fell on deaf ears. A lot of our people at that time were unworthy of some of our, unknowledgeable, I could say, of the ways of the government. So he got a vote at that time that the people that were at that meeting, the vote was 169 to 5. 169 of those people voted for termination, but it was kind of, they were duped a little bit because they thought they were voting for the $1,500. They didn't know they were voting to terminate us as a tribe. But other than that, I mean, even if you look at that, at that time it was 169 people voted yes out of 3,200 Menominee Indians, enrolled Indians at that time. So it's just, almost roughly 5%. We're mathematicians, they could probably correct me on that if I'm wrong. So it's not a lot of folks, not a lot of people. But anyway, in '54, the termination bill signed into law. We got terminated. At that time in our history, it was our reservation was ours, in the sense that everything that happened on that reservation, we kind of oversaw it, we took care of it, we did the things that needed to be done. When termination came in, that all went away. All these outside interests kind of now had an interest, and there was a lot of upheaval amongst the tribal members at that time. There was a lot of things going on in our history at that time that wasn't so good. Land's getting cleared and forests getting cut that the people weren't satisfied, or we were really upset with. So there was a lot of opposition to termination after we kind of realized exactly what it all meant. So in '64, there was about 789 Menominees that filed a petition with the government to restore us back. It wasn't, I think, until 4 years later, or 5 years later, there was a grassroots organization started on our reservation called DRUMS. It was the Determination of Rights and Unity of Menominee Shareholders. So we still, as enrolled members, had a stake in our county. When our reservation got terminated, we became a county, and then we had to pay taxes. We couldn't. Our hospitals closed. All kinds of things happened to us. We went from one of the richest tribes in America to one of the poorest in just a matter of 10 years. So this grassroots organization was guided by a lot of our elders on the reservation. They helped to understand and know the alleys and the avenues that the government takes to create restoration. They went petitioned Washington. They did all kinds of things. There was all kinds of stuff going on in our reservation at that time. Even when we got terminated, our enrollment books closed. So it was just as if the government said, "Well, you are no longer Indians. You're no longer Menominees." And we all had a hard time with that. So in '73, after '69 was when the DRUMS organization, they got real going, they got a movement going on our reservation. in '73 is what this picture denotes, is we were signing the restoration bill back into law to restore us back to a federal recognized tribe, which is great for me. I was born in '79, you know, this happened right before I was born, and I don't know what it would have been like if this had not done it. One of the ladies that's there signing right now, her name is Ada Deer. She's a good close relation to my family, and she's done a lot for us as people. The old guy in the back, that's Ernest Menekaunee. He was a big advocate for our drums. There was a lot of elders at that time that were Menominee speakers that didn't speak a lot of English. Menominee spoke Menominee, that were backing drums 100%. Now that's termination restoration, and that's basically 20 years, I just said, but you know, there's lots of things that was going on at that time, and there's no way I could possibly talk about all of it that was happening. This is our reservation in 1854. I just kind of put this on here because I kind of wanted to show you that when our reservation was established in '54, the bands from different areas come onto our reservation, and it shows exactly where they settled. And the Marionette band here, that was here, was ran by a chief called Kashina in our language, and it means like a swift flyer, like a river, you know, it flows fast, that's what it means. It's going really fast. And there's a spot in Kashina on our reservation, which is the biggest city. There's a spot there that's called Kashina's Landing. That's exactly where they came in their canoes. So we know that, and there's actual archaeology that shows that on the ground when you're in that area. Okay, so 1855, this is 100 years I'm going to do in one slide, so let's get ready. I'll get my magic wand out here. Like I said, in 1854 we were put on the reservation. In 1855 our first federal Indian agency was established. 2 years after we were on the reservation, in 1856, we sold 2 of our townships to the Stockbridge-Munsee band. We had it was a whole block, our reservation. That chunk that you see missing, that's the Stockbridge band's reservation today. We had a lot of things going on in our Neopit mill, the Menominee Tribal Enterprises, that was built in 1908. It was a big time in our people's history because we were able to cut our own trees, and we were able to cut it in what we call a sustained yield. The guy on the right is Chief Oshkosh. He's another big chief in our history. He had said that if you were to just cut the mature trees and the dead trees and leave the younger trees, and if you were to cut in a circle and start here and move all the way around but be selective in your cutting, that by the time you made that complete circle you got back, that you'd be able to cut again. And it's actually said now that we've cut our reservation 8 times over already. And you can see from that satellite picture that still the forest is there. The St. Joe's Industrial School was a boarding school that was established on our reservation. A lot of our kids at that time didn't have any schools. They went to a Catholic school, I think, before that. But this was, I guess, non-denominational, but yet the nuns and stuff still kind of ran it, but I don't think they were allowed to put too much Catholicism into it. But it was there. So in 1931 is when we filed 13 lawsuits against the United States government for mismanagement of our forest. And that led to our settlement that we got in 1951 of $8.5 million. 2 years later is when we got terminated as a tribe. So we were doing a lot of things at this time that really we were self-sustaining a lot in our history. We were one of the richest tribes at that time. Okay, treaty time. Like I showed before, this kind of shows some of the important treaties. I think we signed 5 treaties, 5 or 6, I remember. First one was in 1817. It's not on this map, but it was down in St. Louis. It was a peace and friendship with the American government. 1831, We signed a treaty in Nina that kind of gave away 2.5 million acres of land. It was sent, it actually defined our lands north and south of the Fox River and the Wisconsin River. 1836, there was a Treaty of Cedars at Cedar Point on the Fox River. There was a place where 1 million acres was signed over. 1848 was Lake Poygan. That was the last of the remaining lands, tribal lands that we had that was non-reservation. And in 1854, we had our last treaty signed with the American government. That was Casita Falls on our current reservation, establishing the reservation. At that time, it was 12 townships. That's 276,480 acres. Our reservation was, and then we sold those 2 townships 2 years later. Now this picture I put on here is because in 1634, Jean Nicolet was the first non-Indian to meet us, to see us, to know who we were. And this picture is a little bit comical because he's wearing a Chinese robe because he thought he was landing in China. And you can see the surprised look on our ancestors. They don't really quite know how to take it. But it's also said that our dreamers, our medicine people at that time, had a dream prior to him coming that this was going to happen and that was going to change our lifeways forever. So we kind of had that already coming. And I think if you look at that one guy there with the pipe, he kind of knew already, I know what's going on. So, 1634, Jean Nicolet comes. A bunch of other guys, throughout the time. I don't want to bore you guys with dates, but there's quite a few other non-Menominees that visit us. We were right around this time. Most of us, or a lot of us, were in Green Bay. After the fur trapping days and fur trading days. French basically at that time, dominated the area. Sooner or later, it would pass over to British, and then the War of 1812, it went to the Americans. Now, kind of got through that. Now this is the fun part. Now this is the part to me that I like to talk about because it shows the significance of this Menominee River to us as a people. That bear standing there is what in our language is called Sakachakema. And what that basically means is like a unwrestling chief, like I don't know, always moving or something. It's kind of, you can't sit still kind of thing. That's what it means. And Okimau is the chief. That's what that means. Sakach is like that word, unsettling, means fidgety. So the significance of him is the very reason why I'm here. It's because it's the beginning, the origin of who we are, our creation story. That first bear is said to have come right out of the mouth of the Menominee River here, right up the road. It's the heart and soul of who we are. It's our existence. It's where we come from. And our people, as we were talking earlier with some of the folks, I had said that a lot of our kids have lost that connection. When they hear this story and we tell it to them, they don't really, it doesn't ring a bell that hey, you can go 60 miles to the east, and that's exactly where it happened. So this is an important, significant place for us. And I'm humbled to be here and to be able to talk about it. And every time I get in the area, I always go there. I always offer my tobacco. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about our creation story. There's no way I can tell it to you all completely from start to finish. It's pretty lengthy. Also, when you say it in English, it kind of robs it of its true meaning. And it's hard to explain, and anybody that speaks a foreign language would understand that when you kind of a lot of things lost in translation. But I'll summarize it for you guys. And basically, what we call him is Kisamanitu, is the creator God. When he created the earth and he put different, what we call watuk, spirits. He put them here, and he put 4 in the sky and 4 below. And the farthest one in the top are called the Namaki, they're like Thunderbirds. Those are the highest, and those are given a lot of praise in our culture. The very, very bottom one is Sakachukema. He's given a lot of respect. Now, there's people that could say that, that he's kind of a bad guy, but there's really kind of no such thing is that in our culture, because when you talk about him, and there's a certain way that you speak to him when you're offering tobacco, and it's kind of not necessarily it's not the same way you would talk to like the creator or the Thunderbird. He's given him more respect, but he's not revered as some of those other ones. But yet he's extremely powerful. He had 10 sons, and it also says that he was a white bear with a copper tail. One of his sons came up out of the earth. The first one that came up was the very first Menominee. Our word, Owasat, we teach our children that on our reservation, but they kind of lose the meaning because they just think it means bear, and that's it, But it doesn't mean that. It means exactly that first one, that first animal that came out of the earth. That's what Owasat means. So you kind of, it refers back to that creation story. He also was walking up that river, and it said that he had called to the eagle to have him be a brother with him, come join his clan. And it's been told to us in our oral history that actually happened in Lake Winnebago on the bluffs, is where that eagle first came down and became man, and he walked this way, and they joined together at the Menominee River. They also seen in that river, what we call as Nemau, is a beaver, and that beaver came up that stream and asked if he could join their clan, join their tribe, and they said he could. But when that beaver come out of the water, it became a woman, the first woman. Up and down that river they kept walking, and more animals came. The crane came, and the wolf came, and they all became brothers. And those are the original clan members of our tribe. But if you were to do any of our history and our oral history, there's all kinds of clans, all kinds of clans. But that's basically the story. Like I said, I left a lot out just because there's no way I could possibly tell you all of it in time. The other significant feature in that is what we call Spirit Rock. And on our reservation, it was told to us that the story behind that is our people were pretty pitiful at one time, and one of our hunters had a dream, had a fast, and in that fast, he was told by one of our, I guess you could call him like a folk hero, I guess you could call him like a demigod, I guess, in a way. His name is Manipus. And he did a lot of things for our people. He showed us all kinds of teachings he has. Most of our stories revolve around him, and he plays an important role. So this man gets that vision from him, and Manipus tells him to come visit him. And I'll bring 7 of your friends. So that's what he does. He gets 7 of the best people in the village, and they all go to the place that Manipus tells them. Well, they meet him, and then they all get one wish, and he's going to grant it for them. And most of them wished for something that would benefit the tribe, successful hunter, and things like that. Well, the last one asked for everlasting life, and Manipus was angered by that. So he grabbed that man, and he shoved him into the ground, and he made him that rock. Mm-hmm. And he said, from here on out, you're going to always be everlasting. Mm-hmm. It also goes along with, also in that story that says when that rock crumbles and when it goes away, that's when our race will be extinct. Now that rock, I can tell you, I got pictures of it from 1881, and it was probably about that big. That right now is probably about like that. But there's still always tobacco offerings. And the significant reason why I bring this up is because I was told that there's another rock here in Marinette, given that same respect. I was told it was on Water Street. I know exactly where it is. I have yet to go over there, but it's here. And I was told that a long time ago, our ancestors used to fast by it, and had that same revere that is this rock that they got. Every Indian that crossed by it would stop and give tobacco, just like this one. Most people that go by it, that believe in our Indian ways, you know, they stop there and give it that respect. My next slide is there's two other oral histories I kind of wanted to talk on. I know that the white one is kind of hard to see, and I don't know if you can see it too well, but the fish on there is a sturgeon. And in Sturgeon Falls, there's a story of what we call a pierced forehead. And a long time ago, there used to be a band here at the mouth of the Menominee. There also used to be a band further up the river. And every year in springtime, they would wait for the sturgeon to come because the food would dwindle, and they would be really hungry, and they would fish or they would eat. So they would all gather right at this falls where they came up. This first band that gathered there, you know, they would do what they call clan dances. They do all kinds of dances, green corn dance, all kinds of dances, just a festive time, you know, because of the fish. You know, they're going to be fed and they're going to be replenished. So that happened. But at that time, that chief that was at the mouth of the Menominee decided to have his people build a dam there. So they built a dam, and it didn't let the fish get up to the second band of Indians there. And for 4 days, those guys were, you know, just harvesting fish, eating it, celebrating. After a while, that other band was like, well, where are these fish? You know, we're hungry, you know. And the chief of that band sent down a runner down to go see what was going on, see where the fish were. And he went down there, he seen that dam, he seen what was going on. And he ran back right away, and he told his chief up there at that second village. And he said, well, I'm going to send my son down there to tell him. And he said, son, I want to tell you specifically, go down there and tell that chief that while you guys are fasting and having a good time, you know, we're starving up here, you know, we're dancing and having a hard time, we're suffering. Tell him that, you know. So that young man, that boy, that son, he remembered that in his head. He kept saying it over and over and over, you know, exactly what his dad told him to say. So he went down there, told that first chief that. That chief, after he got done hearing that young boy, just stood there and looked at him, didn't say anything. And he was kind of, you know, taken back, that young boy. So that chief grabbed that boy right by his forehead, pinched his forehead, and jammed a stone arrow through his forehead, and told him, that's my reply. Go tell that to your dad. So that's what that boy did. He walked up there and showed his dad what happened. His dad took that stone out of his forehead. He had his runners take that to every village around the area. And they said that war drums were beating so hard it was shaking the trees, and all the villages were getting ready. So that second band came down, and there was a big battle there. And I kind of had what I call a separation of our tribe at that time. There's also people that say that it was an Ojibwe tribe at that time. Most of the elders that I've talked to said it was a separation within our own tribe. So that happened right there at Sturgeon Falls on, it's, I don't know how many miles up, I don't know, 4 or 5 miles from where we are now, up the river. Another part about this is right by the 60 Islands. This is another, right by White Rapids there, is another oral history that I was told. Long time ago, when we used to live here at the mouth of the Menominee, when our young girls and young boys would get to a certain age, it would be for them to go out into the woods and fast, because they were looking for something to help their tribes, to petition these spirits so that they would give them something that would help our people to survive. So this young girl, they said she had long red hair, long beautiful hair, and she was combing her hair all the time. It was her time to go up there, her time to fast. So she picked out a spot and she fasted. She said she fasted for 4 days, no food, no water, and nothing came to her. She came back and shot her mom, you know, I still haven't got nothing, you know. And, well, keep going, you know, keep going. So she kept going. And said she went all about 10 days until she was really weakened. And in that time, she had a real powerful dream. And in that dream, in that fast, it was told to her that she was going to come and live with a spirit for all the suffering that she did for all the rest of her life. She's always going to have everything, plenty, you know, and come and live in this eddy, in this rapids, in this river. It's actually on the east bank of the river there, in White Rapids. And she said that the spirit told her that you could go talk to your parents one more time, you know, let them know what's going to happen. So that's what she did. she went there, went back to her village, told her mom and dad that tomorrow or tonight, that spirit's gonna come get me, I'm gonna go live in that river, and you're not gonna see me anymore. So she went back to the place, she went back, found those rapids, sat down there, and sure enough, that's what happened. The next day, the village went there, looked for her, couldn't find her. Everybody looked all around, she was nowhere to be found. Some while later, her parents had a dream. And in that dream, she came to them, told them, build your lodge here. I'll show you exactly where to build your lodge. Build it this way, and if you build it like this, you'll always have a lot of gain. You'll always have a lot of plentiful things. So the next day after they woke up, that's what they did. They moved and they went there. And sure enough, she appeared to them. And every night she would come, and she would sit on that bank, and she would comb her hair, and they would talk to her. And to this day, it's even said, you know, that if you can go there, that part on the river, you offer her tobacco, you talk to her, give her that tobacco, she lives in those falls. So it's things like that, you know, that there's a lot more on that river. Just like I said, this river is our heartbeat. Is who we are, where we come from as Menominees. And there's stories all up and down of that river, but those are just a couple examples. Now this guy is Louis Bernard Kakatosh. In 1939, he was 81 years old. He was the last Menominee to live here in Marinette, the very last one. His family decided in 1854 that they weren't going to move to their reservation, they were going to stay here. So that's what they did. And this gentleman, I owe a lot to because within my research that I've been doing 5, 6 years ago, I discovered a lot of things about him. He brought up a lot of stuff. He had a lot of working knowledge on the river. His mom is said to have been born at Chappie Rapids, born and raised there. It's actually said that he was his log home was, I'm sure that's not there anymore, but on Ogden Avenue there used to be a Twin City packing company. I don't know if that's still there. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but that's where his log cabin used to be, where he grew up, his homestead. Said he never married, he never had children. His sister died in 1934, and then it was him that was the last one, the last Menominee that ever lived here. It's also said that his grandmother was, or his godmother was Queen Marinette, or this town's named after her. And his great grandfather was Chief Jamal, which is in our history he's a big player. He's an important chief. He did talk in some of the articles that I had read. He talked about how our people from the mouth of the Menominee all the way up to Sturgeon Falls was our burial grounds, all along the river. And you know, doing some archaeology along this river in my time, I have noticed that, witnessed that. You can read anything about it, just Google any Menominee River archaeology, and it'll come up with just a plethora of things. But I had found out just recently that he's actually buried at the Riverside Cemetery. After this talk, I was going to go over there and I was going to offer some tobacco to him. You know, in our language, when you talk of somebody deceased, there's a word that's always used. And when you say their name, like Louis Kakatosh, there's a word it says Katnup. Now, Katnup itself doesn't really have like a literal translation. What I was always told by old people is it's a sign of respect to that one that passed. So when you talk about a relative that has gone on, you always use that word after their name to signify that sign of respect. He also brings up an interesting time in our history. I guess to kind of go along with that Pierce Forehead story about the separation of our tribe, there was also that happening on our reservation. Because when we were put on the reservation in 1854, there was a lot of families that did it and said, no, we're not. You know, we've always been here, we've always lived here, we're going to stay here, just like his family did. That kind of created an animosity on our reservation. It kind of created a split between the people that were on the reservation and the people that were off. Because the people that were off our reservation kind of, they relinquished their rights as Menominees. So for the Menominees on the reservation, you know, it was kind of, you know, like, I don't know how you would say, like derogatory towards them. You know, they weren't. If your family was one of these families that stayed out here, your family was, you were kind of I don't want to say disrespected, but you know, they knew that and they kind of, I guess, brought it up about it. You know, there was a term for these folks that, on our reservation. It was called 49ers. That's what they called them, and it was derogatory. It meant you know, people that I guess gave up on our reservation. Now, me, on the other hand, born in '79, I look at these people as an inspiration. You know, as martyrs, as people that refuse, you know, to give up that land and stay where they were. And to me, they get a lot of respect for me. And that's, like I said before, is why I'm going to offer my tobacco to them. Lastly, these are some of the known archaeological sites along and around the area that are actually tied to the Menominee people. So as you can see, that all these sites are very well documented. There's a lot of information about them. You can see, like, if you can see number 13, anybody can see that anymore. That's kind of like where the mouth of the Menominee is, and all, just so you get kind of an idea of where they all are. Now this is, I'm just going to talk about a couple sites. This one is where we are right now, the Chautauqua site. I know Mr. Thomas Plager used to be a very well-known teacher in the area. He has a lot of information. He's probably more knowledgeable about this than I am. I think his father, I just found out from Mr. Keith West that he's still alive. He was one of the original guys. That he has one of the best collections from this area. He's very knowledgeable. But basically, this Chautauqua site was first identified in 1918 by Fox and Younger. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, was kind of like that time where most of the residents on Bay Shore Street, they were actually doing a lot of collecting, surface collecting, seeing all the artifacts. And Mr. Plager was one of the ones that collected quite a few. He has, I think, the best collection out of all the people that did it. There was shovel testing done here in 94, 99, and 2001, I think was the last time. They shovel tested this actual campus and Ronald Park, some of the other areas, and there's just all kinds of artifacts that they've gotten from the area. It just shows, you know, how vast this village was at one time. You know, when our people were here, when we lived here, it is said, it is known in our oral history that from the mouth of the Menominee River, this site right here, this Chautauqua site, goes all the way down, right down to Green Bay. We did a lot of work on Peshtigo Point. That's not too far from here last year. And I mean at the tribe. I work for the tribe, amateur archaeologist, like Evelyn stated. And we're kind of just now getting involved, not necessarily digging burial mounds because they're extremely sacred to us and important. Everything about a site is extremely sacred and important to us. We take a lot of care and a lot of respect. There's always tobacco offerings, there's always things at feast or something that's going to happen prior to us doing anything. But you know, this site, like I said, I think it is there was over like 4,000 artifacts collected. That site, I think, is like 26 acres, but like I said, you know, I think it goes all the way down to Green Bay because of Peshtigo Point. This is, I don't know if any of you guys know where that is. Now, this is kind of a crude little drawing here. It shows White Rapids, what I talked about before. There's actual, still there, still to this day, Native American dance rings. They're actually still on the ground, you can still see them. There's a sign also that was put there, I think, by the Boy Scouts. I forget, John or Jason Bale, I forgot that landowner, but he's in contact with our tribe, and we contact with him to just make sure that, you know, if he needs help protecting or whatever it is, that we keep that site open. Right by that, those dance circles also, it's on the Wisconsin side of the river. There's also a grave burial there, and when we went up there, I think the first time we went up there was 6 years ago or 7 years ago with our Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, and we went to investigate the cemetery. And when we went in there, it became clear to us exactly what we were looking at. And what we were looking at was our principal religion used to be on a reservation is a Menekaunee. It's called a medicine lodge. And you could see that this graveyard was based off of that medicine lodge. And there's a lot of indicators that signify why that is that way. The way the bodies are placed, you know, the direction they're facing, all these things, you know. They call them spirit homes that were built over the top. They almost look like little dog houses. And there's stories and reasons why all that is done that way. And you know, it made sense. And also the topography, you know, meaning how it was laid out is very indicative of our Menekaunee cemeteries on our reservation. So I do have a picture of those Indian dance rings, and I'll show you guys when I get to that. But also, I wanted to talk to you about two other sites. And one main one was at Riverside. And if you can see in blue there, it says Riverside site. That's where there's the archaic cemetery. And there's a lot of work done there by Marla Buckmaster and a lot of other archaeologists at the time that have done things. That too is there's I think a contemporary aspect to it. So there's other burials there besides the old Indian. But that's also where Mr. Lewis Kakatosh where he's buried. The other site I wanted to talk about was the Rindle site. That's very close to Backlund Mountain Group. It's right in the same area. Backlund Mountain Group is another site. Backlund Mountain Group is fascinating in the sense that this spring, the tribe, we're coming up here to do some digs in the archaeological garden beds. What we're trying to do is to determine what they were growing, how they were growing it, and all the processes that were involved. We've done a lot of work on our reservation to figure that answer out, figure out exactly what is happening. So that is extremely important to us as Menominee people, to understand how they were able to erect these garden beds, how they were able to get what they were growing out of there year after year without exasperating all the nutrients out of the ground, what they were exactly doing. We have some of those answers today, but yet we're still, you know, in the dark in a lot of it. So we're coming up here in spring. Hopefully we're going to be able to do that. I think we've got two excavation units laid out, ready to go. But the Rindle site, I think it's also called the Rio Vista site. There's somewhere up of 7,500 different artifacts that were found on this site. I think most of the artifacts that were found were what we call pottery shards. There's 300, or almost 40,000 different styles. There's some couple different styles, but pottery shards. There was also about 3,000 chip stone tools that were found at this site. So these are important sites. These are the dance rings right here. This map right here was actually done by me and a couple other people from our reservation. Dr. David Overstreet is our I guess, tribal archaeologist right now. His son Ryan Overstreet, my supervisor Larry Meyer, another Menominee, Jennifer Dixon, and her sister. I can't remember her name. I still remember her name. I know I have her name. It just escapes me. She's a Dixon anyway. So we did this map. And that's exactly the way it's laid out. And on that, like I said, on that sign, it says, you know, all these different dances were done here, and then I'm sure they were. And when you go there, you can kind of get that essence about them, you know, that there was some important things going on. But I belong to what is called the Big Drum Society. It's kind of like our Native American religion that's on the reservation. There's other religions also on the reservation, but that one was the oldest, is on there now because we no longer practice as a whole the Menekaunee, you know, the medicine lodge. Some of us are advocates of it. I still participate in it and go to it. But the Big Drum Society this to me, right when I see it, is exactly what it is. This is the way our building, our dance hall, and Zor on our reservation it's done the same way. Everything is the same. And there's a story about all of it. I don't have time to even go into it, but if you wanted to know more, there was a book written, I believe it was, I think it was in the 60s by George and Louise Spindler. It's called Dreamers with Powers. It explains a lot about our Big Drum religion. last part I wanted to talk about, I think my last one is questions, but was there's a project that's going to get built right close to the White Rapids Ranch, but on the Michigan side, back from Mountain Group, and that's called the Back 40 mine. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it, you understand a little bit about it. But we as a tribe are just now kind of gaining, some valuable information to be in opposition to that mine. So hopefully for us, that mine will never go ahead because some of the damage it will do, not only to the river, but to our cultural sites, which mean a lot to us as people. So we're doing things now, and like everyone said, I sit on the Air and Water Quality Task Force. That's one of our main things that we're doing is figuring out how exactly we're going to go about it and what we're doing. So that's going on, and right now, as of I think it was a couple of years ago that their funding fell off, and so they're not. It's just kind of stagnant now, but it'll just be a matter of time until they, find the money to do it. Also, I wanted to also say that at this time, when our snow falls and our snow hits the ground, and our culture and our history, it is the time now to tell to our stories. And I was really happy that that this happened before I come up here, because they say in our culture, when you talk about manacles, when you talk about some of these sacred stories, first you offer that tobacco, to tell them, to let them know, but make sure there's snow on the ground, because spirits under the ground, and they can hear you when you're praising these other ones, is what they say. That's why they always say that wait till the snow's covered on the ground till you talk about some of these other things. And it may not sound like a lot, and it may not make any sense of why that is, but I'm telling you, if I had the time to explain to you perfectly why that is, it makes all the sense in the world. But my last slide is I wanted to open it up to you guys, and I'm very humbled, and I thank you guys for coming today to listen to me kind of ramble on a little bit. Hopefully you got some idea of who we are, the significance to this tribe, of this river, of this land. Go up to your car. This earth has been walked on for 10,000 plus years by my ancestors. And it's not just dirt. It's not just a waterway. It's a lot more. And again, I thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, I'm just curious, what is the proportion on the reservation today of people who do belong to the Native American Church?
Well, Native American Church is different. Native American Church is a different, it's what they call, I guess, peyote.
Yes.
Peyote.
Yes.
There isn't any of that done on our
There
reservation.
isn't anymore, okay.
Mostly now the biggest religion on our reservation, I would have to say, is probably Sunday Catholics.
Okay.
I don't know if they completely follow the Catholicism. There was a lady in the blue back here, and I'll come to you.
I have two questions. What was the name of the book that you just mentioned?
Dreamers with Powers.
Okay.
By George and Louise Spindler.
Dreamers of Power.
And during the time of termination, those 20 years, the people who were born during that time, were they able to enroll in the tribe then, after?
No, they weren't. The Roman books were closed. There was no Menominee. They no longer existed in the eyes of the government. So.
And you couldn't retroactively add them in after you...
Well, that did happen, yeah.
Well, that's what I meant, after...
Yeah, when we got restored in '74, when all those kids that were born then were...
Oh, okay, that's what I was asking.
One of the wonderful resources on the nation's land are the sturgeon. And just recently read an article about the efforts in restoring sturgeon population throughout there. And I understand that in spring each year you have a Menominee Sturgeon Fest. I'm wondering if you tell us a little bit about that, and if non-Menominees are able to attend that.
Yeah, I wanted to put this slide up here for more information before I answer that question. Mr. Joey Owanabe is our director at Menominee Culture and Language. Dave Vino is our Travel Historic Preservation Officer. If you have any more questions, that's my information at the bottom. These guys would be definitely help. But yeah, it's true. In May, I think it's May, April, we have our sturgeon feast every year. Now, the significance part about it is not only that we used to do it here at the Menominee River, but on our present reservation, there is no falls in between Kashina Falls on our reservation and Lake Winnebago and Lake Poigan and all those chains of lakes. So those sturgeon used to come all the way up to Kashina Falls, and then our people would gather there and do the same types of things as they did here, as we would spear them and honor them, do our dances there. I think it was 1989 or 90 is when our Tribal Historic Preservation, Dave Greeno, and some of the other folks wanted to get those sturgeon back here because there was dams erected in the late 1800s that stopped those sturgeon from coming. There's an oral history about our Kashina Falls that in the spring when the snow melts and all that water is real high, there's an underwater drum in that falls and it beats. And it calls those sturgeon all the way back up, so they know where to go. But like I said, the dam stopped them from coming up. I think that was in the 80s or 90s. There was the first dam that was put, but now there's like 2 or 3. But anybody's allowed to come there. We do a lot of our clan dances that time. We do what's called our snake dance. We shove it to the skin, and there's a big long story that goes with it, just along with most everything, Native American. We do a lot of our fish dance. There's lots of things that we do. A lot of stuff going on. It's a happy time. When that first got started, there was a group of people that were going to go down to the Shawano Dam, which is the first dam, and just take some sturgeon out of there and bring them to our reservation. And our tribal leadership at that time didn't want them to do that. Wanted them, let's work with the DNR and let's do this to kind of make that happen. So that's what they did, and we've been working with the DNR ever since, and they bring up, I think this past year it was 25 sturgeon they brought, and some of them we release into the fall, so they're able to stay in there, and I think last year was the first time they were documented that they are responding there, so it's happening again, and it's extremely important to us as a people for that to happen. And
I should just say that they're doing a lot of restoration of those fish on the Menominee River now too.
Yep.
You mentioned just briefly the issue of mining. Could you expand on that a little bit? Do the Menominee Indian people have a particular view or value around mining activity in the state of Wisconsin?
Yeah. No, I don't know if I can speak for all Menominee, and I think you have to talk to our chairman and give him that opportunity to be able to speak for him. But I know that most of us, they call us traditionals, but I don't really care for that term because it means something in the past. But we're just really living the way we were told to live, taught. A lot of us I know are opposed to it, any types of mining. It's so detrimental to the environment, and where these mines exist usually predominantly are built on our natural sites. We don't necessarily agree with them. And I know the one up north in the action up that area, right, that one. We as a tribe and on my task force, we've always had resolutions sent. We're always in with the Chippewa tribes, where we support everything that they're doing. But we're now kind of in an awkward position, you might say, because of the Kenosha thing. So, the tribe really hasn't been out in the forefront, but yet we still, support the Chippewa tribes. Anybody else? Any questions? All right.
So much again.
Sure.
Thank you.